The emergency beacon cut through the void of space like a desperate scream, its quantum-encrypted signal bouncing off relay stations across 3 star systems. Ambassador Kethavar of the Celestial Republic clutched the communication panel with trembling claws as another explosion rocked their diplomatic vessel. "Signal strength at maximum, Ambassador," reported Navigator Yilnax, her usually pristine feathers now singed and disheveled, broadcasting on all emergency frequencies. The Zephyrian pirates had come without warning, their black ships emerging from the asteroid field like hungry predators. The diplomatic convoy, returning from peace negotiations with the Andromedian coalition, had been an easy target. Now 3 of their 5 ships lay in twisted wreckage, their hulls split open like broken eggs against the cosmic dark. Kethavar watched helplessly as another pirate vessel unleashed its weapons upon their remaining escort ship. The brave crew of the Harmony's Dream fought valiantly, but their exploration-class vessel was no match for military-grade weaponry. Within moments, it too joined the growing debris field. "Any response to our distress call?" Kethavar asked, though hope had nearly abandoned him. "Nothing from the Republic fleet, sir. They're still 3 days away at best." Yilnax's voice cracked. "The coalition forces are engaged with the hegemony near the Veil Nebula. The Altarian Navy is... They're demanding we surrender our diplomatic pouches before they'll consider assistance." Kethavar felt his heart sink. The Altarians had always been opportunists, but to demand classified documents during a pirate attack was unconscionable. The diplomatic pouches contained crucial peace treaty details that could prevent a war spanning half the galaxy. "Sir," Communications Officer Veltar suddenly straightened at his station. "I'm receiving something. This is strange. It's not from any known species in our database." "Impossible," Kethavar breathed. "Every civilized species in this region is catalogued. The signal's origin point is..." "Wait, that can't be right." Veltar's antennae twitched nervously. "According to stellar cartography, that system is listed as uninhabitable. Radiation levels that would kill most known life forms. Extreme weather patterns. Violent seismic activity. It's classified as a death world." A chill ran down Kethavar's spine. Death worlds were the stuff of spacer legends. Planets so hostile that no intelligent life could possibly evolve there. Most scientists dismissed such tales as folklore. "The signal is getting stronger," Veltar continued. They're acknowledging our distress call. The translation matrix is having trouble with their language, but I think they're saying they're coming to help." Before Kethavar could respond, the pirate flagship opened a communication channel. The scarred face of Captain Drexmall appeared on screen, his cybernetic eye gleaming with malicious amusement. "Republic scum," Drexmall sneered. "Surrender now and we might let your crew live long enough to be sold at the slave markets of Proxima Station." "Your choice, Ambassador." "The Republic does not negotiate with terrorists," Kethavar replied with more courage than he felt. Drexmall laughed, a sound like grinding metal. "Noble words from a dead man, very well. Destroy them." The pirate ships began moving into attack formation when suddenly, space itself seemed to tear open. A massive rift appeared near the edge of the system, crackling with energy that made the ship's sensors scream warnings. Something was coming through. Something that defied everything the Republic knew about faster-than-light travel. The first ship that emerged was unlike anything in any species' database. Its hull was a dull gray-black metal that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Strange markings covered its surface, and weapon ports bristled along its flanks like the spines of some deep space predator. But what truly struck fear into every heart present was its size. The vessel dwarfed even the largest pirate ship, stretching nearly 2 kilometers from bow to stern. "What in the name of the eternal stars is that?" whispered Navigator Yilnax. More ships began emerging from the rift. Smaller vessels, but still massive by Republic standards, flanked the behemoth. Their designs were utilitarian, brutal in their efficiency. These were ships built for war, forged in the fires of countless battles. Captain Drexmall's confident demeanor evaporated as his sensors registered the newcomers. "Unknown vessels, identify yourselves immediately." The response came not through normal communication channels but broadcast on every frequency simultaneously. The voice that spoke was unlike anything they had ever heard. It was deep, gravelly, carrying an undertone of barely controlled violence that made even the pirates flinch. "This is Admiral Sarah Chen of the United Earth Defense Force. We received a distress signal. Stand down immediately or face the consequences. Earth? Kethavar searched his memory banks frantically. That's the name of the Death World. But that's impossible. The pirate captain tried to regain his composure. I don't know what backwater system you crawled out of, but this is Zephyrian space. You have no authority here. Leave now or... His words were cut off as one of the smaller human ships fired a single projectile. It wasn't an energy weapon like every civilized species used. Instead, it was a solid mass of metal traveling at a significant fraction of light speed. The projectile struck the pirate flagship's shields and they simply ceased to exist. The round continued through the hull as if it were paper, emerging from the other side in a shower of sparks and debris. The massive pirate ship, pride of the Zephyrian fleet, began breaking apart. Impossible! Drexamol gasped as his ship died around him. No projectile weapon could penetrate quantum shields. Admiral Chen's voice came again, cold as the void between stars. Surrender now. This is your only warning. The remaining pirate vessels opened fire as one, their energy beams lancing out toward the human fleet. The weapons that could slice through Republic hulls like butter struck the strange gray ships and simply disappeared, absorbed by some unknown technology. The human response was swift and terrible. More projectile weapons fired, each shot precisely targeted. Pirate ships exploded in brilliant fireballs as their reactors were punctured by impossible velocities. Within minutes, the entire pirate fleet was nothing but expanding clouds of superheated gas. This is Admiral Chen to the Republic vessel, came the voice again, though now it carried a note of concern rather than threat. Are you injured? Do you require medical assistance? Kethavar stared at the view screen in stunned silence. These creatures from a death world had just accomplished in minutes what an entire Republic fleet would have struggled to do. But more than that, they had answered a distress call from complete strangers, crossing the void to help those in need. Ambassador? Prompted Veltar softly. Kethavar shook himself from his amazement. Yes, Admiral Chen, we have wounded aboard and... Thank you. We owe you our lives. No debt necessary, came the reply. Just doing what's right. Preparing to dock for medical assistance. As the human ships moved closer, Kethavar realized that everything the Republic knew about the galaxy had just changed forever. The docking clamps engaged with a grinding sound that resonated through the Republic vessel's hull. Ambassador Kethavar stood in the main corridor, flanked by his surviving security detail, as they waited for their rescuers to board. His hands trembled slightly, though whether from fear or excitement he couldn't say. The airlock hissed open, revealing a decontamination chamber filled with strange blue light. Then through the inner door stepped the most terrifying and magnificent beings Kethavar had ever seen. They called themselves humans, but they looked like living nightmares given form. Standing upright on only two legs, they towered above most species Kethavar knew. Their skin was a pale, pinkish tone that seemed almost translucent, revealing the network of blood vessels beneath. Most disturbing of all were their eyes, small and forward-facing like a predator's, colored in unnatural shades of blue and brown. The first human through the door moved with fluid grace despite bulky armor that looked more like a mechanical exoskeleton than protective gear. The nameplate on the chest read, Medic Torres. Behind the transparent faceplate, Kethavar could see the human's face, marked with concern rather than aggression. Ambassador Kethavar? The human's voice was surprisingly gentle. I'm Dr. Maria Torres, ship's physician. We understand you have wounded crew members. Kethavar found his voice. Yes, 17 injured, 3 in critical condition. But doctor, we must warn you, our physiology may be completely incompatible with your medical knowledge. Dr. Torres smiled, an expression that revealed sharp white teeth but somehow conveyed warmth rather than threat. Don't worry, Ambassador. Our medical AI has been analyzing your biosignatures since we arrived. Fascinating species, actually. Your cellular regeneration capabilities are remarkable. The human medic moved past them with swift efficiency, carrying strange equipment that hummed with unknown energies. 2 more humans followed, their movements coordinated like a pack of hunters. But instead of weapons, they carried medical supplies and scanning devices. Incredible, whispered Navigator Yilnax. They're analyzing our entire biological structure in real time. More humans entered the ship, and Kethavar was struck by their diversity. Their skin tones ranged from pale cream to deep brown. Their hair varied in color and texture, and their facial features showed remarkable variation. Yet they all moved with the same predatory grace, the same barely contained strength. One human, clearly a leader by the deference others showed him, approached Kethvar. This one was older, with silver-gray hair and scars marking his face. His armor bore the insignia of command, and his eyes held the weight of someone who had seen too much war. "Commander Jackson," the human introduced himself, "I need to know what happened here." "Those pirates, were they part of a larger force?" Kethvar explained the attack, the diplomatic mission, and the pirates' demands. Commander Jackson listened intently, occasionally asking clarifying questions that revealed a tactical mind of frightening capability. "Zephyrian pirates," Jackson mused. "We've encountered them before. Slave traders and murderers. The galaxy would be better off without them. You've had contact with other species before?" Kethvar asked, surprised. Jackson's expression darkened. "Limited contact. Most of it hostile. Seems the galaxy has some strong opinions about Deathworlders." "Deathworlders? That's what you call us, isn't it? Species from worlds too hostile to support civilized life?" Jackson's tone carried an edge of bitter amusement. "What your people don't understand is that hostile worlds don't create weak species. They create survivors." Dr. Torres's voice echoed through the ship's communication system. "Commander, you need to see this." They made their way to the medical bay where Dr. Torres was examining one of the wounded Republic crew members. The alien's injuries would have been fatal by Republic medical standards, but the human doctor worked with tools that seemed to repair tissue at the cellular level. "The injury patterns," Dr. Torres explained without looking up from her patient. "These weren't caused by standard pirate weapons. Look at the energy signature burns." She displayed a holographic analysis that made Kethvar's blood run cold. "These are hegemony weapons. Military grade, not something pirates should have access to." Commander Jackson's face hardened. "Are you telling me the hegemony is arming pirates?" "It's worse than that," came Admiral Chen's voice over the comm system. "Commander, we've detected 3 hegemony cruisers heading this way. They'll be here within the hour." The pieces fell into place in Kethvar's mind. This wasn't a random pirate attack. It was an ambush. The hegemony wanted our diplomatic pouches, the peace treaty details. If they can prevent the alliance between the Republic and the Coalition, they can continue their expansion unchecked, Jackson finished grimly. "How many ships are coming?" 3 heavy cruisers and a support fleet, Admiral Chen reported. 12 ships total. They're not trying to hide their approach. Kethvar felt despair creep over him. Even these incredible humans couldn't face an entire hegemony battle group. "You should leave," he said quietly. "You've saved our lives. Don't throw yours away for strangers." Commander Jackson turned to look at him, and in those predator eyes Kethvar saw something that made his spine tingle. It wasn't fear or resignation. It was anticipation. "Ambassador," Jackson said slowly, "there's something you should understand about humans. We have a saying, nobody fights alone. Once we commit to protecting someone, we don't abandon them. But 12 ships against 5, actually," Admiral Chen's voice carried a note of grim satisfaction. "It's 12 ships against 37. Kethvar blinked in confusion. 37? But you only brought 5 vessels. Dr. Torres looked up from her patient with a smile that was absolutely terrifying. "Did you think 5 ships was all humanity could spare?" "Admiral, show them." The main view screen activated, displaying the space around them. Kethvar gasped as more rifts tore open in reality. Ship after ship emerged from what the humans called jump space, each one larger and more heavily armed than the last. Massive carriers disgorged clouds of smaller craft. Battleships that dwarfed anything in the Republic Navy took position in perfect formation. "The 7th Fleet," Commander Jackson explained casually. "We were conducting training exercises in the next system when your distress call came in." "Training exercises?" Kethvar's voice was barely a whisper. "Well, you can't expect us to send untested crews into combat," Jackson replied. "Though I suppose this will be good practical experience." Admiral Chen's voice came over the comm again. "Hegemony ships are demanding our immediate withdrawal. They claim this system is under their protection." "Tell them," Commander Jackson said, his voice carrying the weight of contained violence, "that this system is now under human protection. If they want to discuss terms, they can do so from outside weapons range." Kethvar watched the tactical display as the hegemony fleet approached. Their ships were sleek, advanced, carrying shields and weapons that represented centuries of technological development. By every metric he knew, they should easily overwhelm the human force. But as he looked at the humans around him, at their calm confidence and barely contained eagerness for battle, he began to understand something profound. These beings from the death world called Earth hadn't just survived in impossible conditions. They had thrived. They had turned hostility into strength, danger into opportunity. The hegemony was about to learn what every predator eventually discovers when it mistakes prey for something helpless. Sometimes what you think you're hunting is actually hunting you. All hands, Admiral Chen announced across the fleet. Prepare for combat. Remember, we have innocents to protect. Make every shot count. The response from 37 ships was instantaneous and chilling. Hoorah! Kethavar had never heard the sound before, but somehow he knew it was the war cry of a species that had never learned to surrender. The hegemony fleet emerged from faster-than-light travel in perfect formation, their ships gleaming like predatory fish in the starlight. Admiral Vexthul of the hegemony navy stood on the bridge of his flagship, the inevitable Victory, watching the tactical display with growing confusion. 37 contacts, his tactical officer reported, mandibles clicking nervously. Unknown configuration. Energy signatures unlike anything in our database. Unknown? Vexthul's 4 eyes focused on the display. Impossible. We have detailed files on every military force in this sector. Admiral, his communications officer interrupted, the unknown fleet is broadcasting on all frequencies. Put them through. The voice that filled the bridge was unlike anything in Vexthul's experience. Deep, controlled, carrying an undertone that made his skin crawl with ancestral fear. This is Admiral Sarah Chen of the United Earth Defense Force. You are in violation of interstellar law by attacking a civilian diplomatic vessel. Withdraw immediately or face the consequences. Vexthul's laughter echoed through the bridge. Earth? The death world amusing. Unknown commander. You are interfering with hegemony operations. Leave now and we will pretend this never happened. Negative. The Republic vessel is under our protection. Your protection? Vexthul studied the tactical display again. The unknown ships were larger than his own, but that meant nothing. Size without proper technology was useless. I will give you one opportunity to reconsider. The hegemony navy does not negotiate with primitives. The response came immediately, cold as the void between stars. Then you've made your choice. On the Republic diplomatic vessel, Ambassador Kethavar watched the exchange with growing dread. The hegemony fleet was legendary for its efficiency and ruthlessness. Each of those ships could reduce a planet's surface to glass. Commander Jackson, he said urgently, the hegemony has quantum torpedo technology. Their shields can withstand stellar-class energies. Perhaps we should— Ambassador, Jackson interrupted gently. Watch and learn something about human warfare. The first shot came from the hegemony flagship. A brilliant lance of energy that could punch through a small moon struck the human flagship directly. The Republic crew held their breath, waiting for the explosion that would vaporize the massive vessel. The energy beam simply vanished against the human ship's hull, absorbed as if it had never existed. Impossible, breathed Navigator Yilnax. No known technology can completely negate that much energy. Commander Jackson smiled grimly. You're right. No known technology. We had to invent our own. Admiral Vexthul stared at his tactical display in disbelief. Full spread, all ships. Target their command vessel. 12 hegemony ships opened fire simultaneously, their combined firepower enough to crack a continent. Beam after beam struck the human flagship, creating a light show that should have marked the death of gods. When the energy dissipated, the human ship hung in space completely undamaged. Admiral Chen, came Commander Jackson's voice over the comm. I believe it's our turn. The human response was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Instead of the elegant energy weapons favored by civilized species, the human ships launched what appeared to be simple metal projectiles. But these projectiles moved at velocities that bent space-time around them, creating gravitational eddies that the hegemony sensors couldn't track. The first projectile struck the hegemony cruiser Swift Retribution amidships. The quantum shields that could deflect the fury of a star didn't even slow it down. The round passed completely through the ship, leaving a perfectly circular hole through which the crew was explosively decompressed into space. Evasive maneuvers. Vexthul screamed, but his ships were massive and slow to turn. More projectiles followed, each one finding its target with impossible precision. The human weapons weren't just powerful, they were smart, adjusting their trajectories mid-flight to compensate for enemy movement. Dr. Torres, still working in the Republic Medical Bay, glanced up at the tactical display. Kinetic kill vehicles, she explained casually to the stunned aliens around her. When you can accelerate a chunk of metal to 30% of light speed, you don't need fancy energy weapons. Another hegemony ship exploded as its reactor was punctured. Then another. The legendary fleet that had conquered star systems was being systematically dismantled by weapons that shouldn't have been able to touch them. How? Vexthul whispered as his formation collapsed around him. Our shields should stop anything. Your shields are designed to deflect energy. Admiral Chen's voice came across the comm, calm and professional. Our weapons don't use energy. They use mass and velocity. Basic physics. But the humans weren't finished demonstrating their capabilities. As the remaining hegemony ships tried to retreat, space around them began to distort. Gravitational fields that shouldn't have been possible trapped the fleeing vessels like insects in amber. Gravitational manipulation, Commander Jackson explained to the awed Republic crew. When you live on a death world, you learn to use every force available. Admiral Vexthul realized with growing horror that his fleet wasn't just being defeated. It was being studied. The humans were testing different weapons, different approaches, treating the battle like a learning experience rather than a life-or-death struggle. A new type of projectile struck his flagship's secondary hull. Instead of punching through, it released a cloud of microscopic machines that began dismantling the ship at the molecular level. Within minutes, an entire section of the inevitable victory simply ceased to exist. Its atoms reorganized into inert gas. Nanite swarm, Dr. Torres noted with scientific interest. Effective, but we prefer the kinetic approach. More reliable. Surrender, Admiral Vexthul transmitted desperately. We surrender. The human weapon stopped firing immediately. Admiral Chen's voice carried across space with authority that brooked no argument. All hegemony vessels will power down weapons and prepare for boarding. Any attempt to restart hostilities will result in the complete destruction of your fleet. Vexthul looked around his bridge at his terrified crew. These humans fought with weapons that shouldn't exist, used tactics that violated everything he knew about space combat, and then showed mercy to their defeated enemies. What manner of beings were they? On the Republic vessel, Ambassador Kethavar stared at the tactical display showing the scattered remnants of the hegemony fleet. Less than 30 minutes had passed since the battle began. An entire hegemony battle group, the terror of 3 star systems, had been utterly destroyed or captured. Commander, he said quietly, your people have just changed the balance of power in this entire region of space. Jackson nodded soberly. That's what happens when you threaten innocence in front of humans, Ambassador. We take that personally. But how? How did you develop such advanced technology on a death world? Dr. Torres looked up from her patient with that terrifying smile. That's the thing about death worlds, Ambassador. Everything there is trying to kill you. The radiation, the storms, the predators, the diseases, even the plants. When you spend millions of years fighting for survival against an entire planet, fighting other species becomes almost easy by comparison. Your weapons, your shields, your tactics, Kethavar pressed. Where did they come from? Necessity, Jackson replied simply. When your world is trying to kill you every day, you either adapt or die. We adapted. We learned to turn every force in the universe into a tool. Gravity, electromagnetism, strong and weak nuclear forces, even quantum mechanics. If it exists, we found a way to weaponize it. Commander Jackson gestured toward the view screen showing the defeated hegemony ships. Those admirals spent their careers fighting civilized enemies who played by civilized rules. They never fought someone who learned warfare from surviving against nature itself. Admiral Chen's voice came over the comm again. Ambassador Kethavar, we're detecting more ships approaching from multiple vectors. It appears word of this engagement has spread. More hegemony reinforcements? Kethavar asked with alarm. Negative. These are Republic, Coalition, and Altarian vessels, and... There was a pause filled with surprise. Several species we don't recognize. They're all requesting permission to approach. Kethavar understood immediately. News of the humans' intervention had spread across the quantum communication networks. Every major power in the region was converging on this system, drawn by reports of the impossible. A completely unknown military force that had effortlessly destroyed a hegemony battle group. Commander, he said slowly, I think your people are about to become very popular. And very feared. Jackson's smile was grim. Good, fear keeps people honest. And popularity means we might actually be able to help bring peace to this region. The age of human isolation was over. The galaxy was about to learn what happened when a species raised by a death world decided to make friends. The hegemony fleet emerged from faster-than-light travel in perfect formation, their ships gleaming like predatory fish in the starlight. Admiral Vex Thule of the hegemony navy stood on the bridge of his flagship, the inevitable Victory, watching the tactical display with growing confusion. 37 contacts, his tactical officer reported, mandibles clicking nervously. Unknown configuration. Energy signatures unlike anything in our database. Unknown? Vex Thule's 4 eyes focused on the display. Impossible. We have detailed files on every military force in this sector. Admiral, his communications officer interrupted, the unknown fleet is broadcasting on all frequencies. Put them through. The voice that filled the bridge was unlike anything in Vex Thule's experience. Deep, controlled, carrying an undertone that made his skin crawl with ancestral fear. This is Admiral Sarah Chen of the United Earth Defense Force. You are in violation of interstellar law by attacking a civilian diplomatic vessel. Withdraw immediately or face the consequences. Vex Thule's laughter echoed through the bridge. Earth? The Death World, amusing. Unknown Commander, you are interfering with hegemony operations. Leave now and we will pretend this never happened. Negative. The Republic vessel is under our protection. Your protection? Vex Thule studied the tactical display again. The unknown ships were larger than his own, but that meant nothing. Size without proper technology was useless. I will give you one opportunity to reconsider. The hegemony navy does not negotiate with primitives. The response came immediately, cold as the void between stars. Then you've made your choice. On the Republic diplomatic vessel, Ambassador Kethavar watched the exchange with growing dread. The hegemony fleet was legendary for its efficiency and ruthlessness. Each of those ships could reduce a planet's surface to glass. Commander Jackson, he said urgently, the hegemony has quantum torpedo technology. Their shields can withstand stellar-class energies. Perhaps we should— Ambassador, Jackson interrupted gently, watch and learn something about human warfare. The first shot came from the hegemony flagship. A brilliant lance of energy that could punch through a small moon struck the human flagship directly. The Republic crew held their breath, waiting for the explosion that would vaporize the massive vessel. The energy beam simply vanished against the human ship's hull, absorbed as if it had never existed. Impossible, breathed Navigator Yilnax. No known technology can completely negate that much energy. Commander Jackson smiled grimly. You're right. No known technology. We had to invent our own. Admiral Vex Thule stared at his tactical display in disbelief. Full spread all ships. Target their command vessel. 12 hegemony ships opened fire simultaneously, their combined firepower enough to crack a continent. Beam after beam struck the human flagship, creating a light show that should have marked the death of gods. When the energy dissipated, the human ship hung in space completely undamaged. Admiral Chen, came Commander Jackson's voice over the comm. I believe it's our turn. The human response was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Instead of the elegant energy weapons favored by civilized species, the human ships launched what appeared to be simple metal projectiles. But these projectiles moved at velocities that bent space-time around them, creating gravitational eddies that the hegemony sensors couldn't track. The first projectile struck the hegemony cruiser Swift Retribution amidships. The quantum shields that could deflect the fury of a star didn't even slow it down. The round passed completely through the ship, leaving a perfectly circular hole through which the crew was explosively decompressed into space. Evasive maneuvers, Vex Thule screamed, but his ships were massive and slow to turn. More projectiles followed, each one finding its target with impossible precision. The human weapons weren't just powerful, they were smart, adjusting their trajectories mid-flight to compensate for enemy movement. Dr. Torres, still working in the Republic Medical Bay, glanced up at the tactical display. Kinetic kill vehicles, she explained casually to the stunned aliens around her. When you can accelerate a chunk of metal to 30% of light speed, you don't need fancy energy weapons. Another hegemony ship exploded as its reactor was punctured. Then another, The legendary fleet that had conquered star systems was being systematically dismantled by weapons that shouldn't have been able to touch them. How? Vexthul whispered as his formation collapsed around him. Our shields should stop anything. Your shields are designed to deflect energy. Admiral Chen's voice came across the comm, calm and professional. Our weapons don't use energy. They use mass and velocity, basic physics. But the humans weren't finished demonstrating their capabilities. As the remaining hegemony ships tried to retreat, space around them began to distort. Gravitational fields that shouldn't have been possible trapped the fleeing vessels like insects in amber. Gravitational manipulation, Commander Jackson explained to the awed Republic crew. When you live on a death world, you learn to use every force available. Admiral Vexthul realized with growing horror that his fleet wasn't just being defeated. It was being studied. The humans were testing different weapons, different approaches, treating the battle like a learning experience rather than a life-or-death struggle. A new type of projectile struck his flagship's secondary hull. Instead of punching through, it released a cloud of microscopic machines that began dismantling the ship at the molecular level. Within minutes, an entire section of the inevitable victory simply ceased to exist, its atoms reorganized into inert gas. Nanite swarm, Dr. Torres noted with scientific interest. Effective, but we prefer the kinetic approach. More reliable. Surrender, Admiral Vexthul transmitted desperately. We surrender. The human weapons stopped firing immediately. Admiral Chen's voice carried across space with authority that brooked no argument. All hegemony vessels will power down weapons and prepare for boarding. Any attempt to restart hostilities will result in the complete destruction of your fleet. Vexthul looked around his bridge at his terrified crew. These humans fought with weapons that shouldn't exist, used tactics that violated everything he knew about space combat, and then showed mercy to their defeated enemies. What manner of beings were they? On the Republic vessel, Ambassador Kethvar stared at the tactical display showing the scattered remnants of the hegemony fleet. Less than 30 minutes had passed since the battle began. An entire hegemony battle group, the terror of 3 star systems, had been utterly destroyed or captured. Commander, he said quietly, your people have just changed the balance of power in this entire region of space. Jackson nodded soberly. That's what happens when you threaten innocence in front of humans, Ambassador. We take that personally. But how? How did you develop such advanced technology on a death world? Dr. Torres looked up from her patient with that terrifying smile. That's the thing about death worlds, Ambassador. Everything there is trying to kill you. The radiation, the storms, the predators, the diseases, even the plants. When you spend millions of years fighting for survival against an entire planet, fighting other species becomes almost easy by comparison. Your weapons, your shields, your tactics, Kethvar pressed. Where did they come from? Necessity, Jackson replied simply. When your world is trying to kill you every day, you either adapt or die. We adapted. We learned to turn every force in the universe into a tool. Gravity, electromagnetism, strong and weak nuclear forces, even quantum mechanics. If it exists, we found a way to weaponize it. Commander Jackson gestured toward the view screen showing the defeated hegemony ships. Those admirals spent their careers fighting civilized enemies who played by civilized rules. They never fought someone who learned warfare from surviving against nature itself. Admiral Chen's voice came over the comm again. Ambassador Kethvar, we're detecting more ships approaching from multiple vectors. It appears word of this engagement has spread. More hegemony reinforcements? Kethvar asked with alarm. Negative. These are Republic, Coalition, and Altarian vessels, and there was a pause filled with surprise. Several species we don't recognize. They're all requesting permission to approach. Kethvar understood immediately. News of the humans' intervention had spread across the quantum communication networks. Every major power in the region was converging on this system, drawn by reports of the impossible, a completely unknown military force that had effortlessly destroyed a hegemony battle group. Commander, he said slowly, I think your people are about to become very popular and very feared. Jackson's smile was grim. Good. Fear keeps people honest, and popularity means we might actually be able to help bring peace to this region. The age of human isolation was over. The galaxy was about to learn what happened when a species raised by a death world decided to make friends. 3 weeks after the first diplomatic contact, the testing began. Not the formal kind conducted in laboratories. but the real test that would determine whether humanity's offer of friendship was genuine or an elaborate deception. The crisis started in the Kepler 442 system, where the mining colony of New Prosperity had been suffering a slow-motion disaster for months. The planet's unstable core had begun shifting, causing massive earthquakes that threatened to destroy the primary mining operations that fed raw materials to a dozen star systems. Ambassador Kethavar was aboard the human flagship when the distress call came through. Admiral Chen listened to the desperate plea for help with the same focused attention she had given military threats. Estimated casualties if the main continental shelf collapses? She asked her science officer. Lieutenant Commander Sarah Kim, a geological specialist, consulted her instruments. Conservative estimate, 2 million immediate deaths, another 5 million over the following months as infrastructure fails. The economic impact would destabilize the entire sector. Distance to Kepler 442? 4 days at maximum jump speed, Navigation Officer Martinez replied. Admiral Chen nodded grimly. Set course immediately. Alert all medical and engineering teams. Ambassador Kethavar watched this exchange with growing amazement. Admiral, New Prosperity is a hegemony colony world. After what happened 3 weeks ago, they have every reason to fear human intervention. They asked for help. Admiral Chen replied simply. Politics stops mattering when people are dying. The journey to Kepler 442 gave the human fleet time to prepare, and Kethavar had the opportunity to observe something remarkable. The same ships that had casually destroyed a battle group were being rapidly reconfigured for humanitarian purposes. Weapons bays were converted to cargo holds filled with emergency supplies. Medical facilities expanded to handle alien physiology. Engineering teams worked around the clock to modify their equipment for geological stabilization. Dr. Torres found Kethavar in the observation deck, staring out at the planet that was growing larger on the view screen. Nervous, Ambassador? Confused, Kethavar admitted. Your people are risking everything to help a hegemony world. If this goes wrong, it could restart the war. Or it could end it, Dr. Torres replied, joining him at the window. Sometimes the best way to make a friend is to help them when they don't expect it. The planet below them was a testament to geological violence. Massive cracks scarred the surface where the shifting core had created fault lines. Cities clung precariously to stable ground that was becoming increasingly rare. As they watched, another section of the northern continent shuddered and collapsed, sending clouds of dust into the atmosphere. Incoming transmission from the surface, Communications Officer Chen announced. The face that appeared on screen belonged to Governor Mal Thek, a hegemony official who looked like he hadn't slept in weeks. His usual arrogance had been replaced by desperate hope. Admiral Chen, we didn't expect the humans to respond to our call. Governor, Admiral Chen replied with professional courtesy. We're here to help. What's your current situation? The main tectonic plate is destabilizing faster than our projections indicated. We have perhaps 6 hours before the capital city falls into the planetary core. Our evacuation ships can only carry 1/10 of the population. Understood. We're deploying geological stabilization teams immediately. Can you provide detailed seismic data? Governor Malthek hesitated. Admiral, that data is classified. Military applications? Governor. Admiral Chen's voice carried quiet authority. I need that data to save your people. You can redact whatever you feel necessary, but I need to know what we're working with. As the data transfer began, Commander Jackson appeared beside Kethavar. Come with me, Ambassador. I want you to see something. They made their way to the engineering decks where Kethavar witnessed something that defied everything he thought he knew about human technology. Teams of engineers were assembling devices that looked more like art than machinery, flowing curves of metal and crystal that hummed with contained energy. Gravitational manipulators, Jackson explained. We're going to reach down into the planet's core and physically realign the unstable elements. Is that even possible? Kethavar gasped. We're about to find out, Jackson replied grimly. We've done it before on smaller scales, but never on a planetary level. If it works, we'll have saved millions of lives. If it doesn't, he didn't need to finish. If the attempt failed, the planet would tear itself apart even faster, and humanity would be blamed for accelerating a natural disaster. The deployment began immediately. Human shuttles descended through the turbulent atmosphere, carrying equipment that the galaxy's best scientists would have called impossible. Teams of engineers and geologists worked alongside hegemony. Personnel who had initially been suspicious but were now desperately grateful for any help. Dr. Torres led a medical team that established treatment centers near the worst affected areas. Kethavar watched in amazement as human medics worked tirelessly to treat injuries and illnesses that weren't even in their medical databases, adapting their techniques in real time. "Admiral," came Lieutenant Commander Kim's voice over the comm. "We've got the gravitational anchors in position, but the core instability is worse than we thought. The magnetic field is fluctuating wildly. Can we compensate? Maybe, but we'll need to coordinate the activation sequence perfectly. If we're off by even a few seconds, we could make things worse." Admiral Chen looked at the tactical display showing gravitational anchors placed around the planet's core like precisely positioned pins holding together a broken piece of pottery. Each anchor required perfect timing to create a network of forces that would stabilize the geological chaos. "Below, do it," she ordered. The activation sequence began with a low thrumming that seemed to come from the planet itself. On the surface, hegemony civilians looked up in wonder as the constant earthquake suddenly stopped. Deep beneath their feet, forces beyond their comprehension were literally holding their world together. "Gravitational network stable," Kim reported, relief evident in her voice. "Core temperature dropping. Magnetic field stabilizing." But the celebration was premature. Alarms began sounding throughout the human fleet as sensors detected something approaching from the edge of the system. "Multiple contacts," Navigation Officer Martinez announced grimly. "Hegemony military fleet, 12 ships approaching fast." Governor Malthek's face appeared on the communication screen, now showing genuine distress. "Admiral Chen, I swear I didn't call them. The fleet commander must have detected your presence." Admiral Chen studied the approaching ships with calm professionalism. "Governor, are those ships here to help with the evacuation or to engage us?" "Admiral," came a new voice over the comm, harsh and aggressive. "This is Fleet Commander Korkstan of the Hegemony Navy. You will withdraw from our territory immediately." "Commander," Admiral Chen replied evenly, "we're conducting humanitarian operations at the request of your planetary government. I don't care if you're performing miracles. No human ships will be tolerated in Hegemony space." Ambassador Kethavar watched the tactical display with growing dread. The approaching Hegemony ships were positioning themselves for combat, despite the fact that human engineering teams were still on the planet's surface holding their world together. "Admiral," Governor Malthek pleaded, "if you leave now, the stabilization field will collapse. 2 million people will die. And if we stay," Admiral Chen replied quietly, "we'll have to fight our way out, potentially causing exactly the kind of incident we're trying to avoid." Commander Jackson stepped forward. "Admiral, the engineering teams report they need at least 12 more hours to make the stabilization permanent." 12 hours with a hostile fleet breathing down our necks," Admiral Chen mused. "Governor, can you convince your fleet commander to stand down?" "I've been trying," Malthek replied desperately. "He won't listen. He says orders are orders." Admiral Chen looked around the bridge at her crew, then at Ambassador Kethavar. "Ambassador, your opinion?" Kethavar felt the weight of history on his shoulders. The wrong decision here could plunge the galaxy back into war. The right decision might save millions of lives and prove that humans truly meant what they said about peace. "Admiral," he said slowly, "sometimes the right thing to do is also the hardest thing to do." Admiral Chen smiled, and for the first time since he'd met her, it was neither threatening nor predatory. It was simply human. "All ships," she announced to her fleet, "maintain position. Continue humanitarian operations. If the Hegemony fleet attacks, defend yourselves, but do not fire first. We're here to save lives, not take them." The next 12 hours would determine whether humanity's offer of friendship was strong enough to survive its first real test. The standoff stretched through the night cycle as human engineers worked frantically on the planet's surface, while Hegemony warships maintained an increasingly aggressive patrol pattern. Fleet Commander Korkstan had positioned his vessels in a blockade formation, clearly intending to attack the moment the humans showed any sign of completing their mission. Ambassador Kethavar found himself in the unique position of watching history unfold from the bridge of humanity's flagship. Admiral Chen had maintained her position with remarkable calm, but he could see the tension in her crew as they balanced their rescue mission against the growing threat above. Status report. Admiral Chen requested for the 10th time in as many hours. "Lieutenant Commander," Kim's voice crackled through the comm from the planet's surface. Gravitational anchors are holding, but we need 8 more hours minimum to establish permanent stability. The core realignment is more complex than we initially calculated. And the hegemony fleet? Still in position, Navigation Officer Martinez reported. No change in formation, but their weapons are charged and ready. Dr. Torres appeared on the bridge carrying a data pad that displayed medical statistics. Admiral, we've treated over 3,000 injured civilians so far. The hegemony medical teams are overwhelmed and they're actually requesting our assistance. Admiral Chen nodded grimly. Any word from their fleet commander about allowing medical cooperation? He's refused all communication since his initial demand that we withdraw. Communications Officer Chen replied. As if summoned by their conversation, Fleet Commander Korkstan's image appeared on the main screen. The hegemony officer's forearms were crossed in an aggressive posture, and his cybernetic eye gleamed with malevolent light. Human Admiral, he spat. You have exactly 1 hour to complete your withdrawal. After that, I will consider your presence an act of war. Commander Korkstan, Admiral Chen replied with remarkable patience. Our engineering teams need 8 more hours to make the planetary stabilization permanent. If we leave now, the gravitational field will collapse and millions of your people will die. That is not my concern. My orders are clear, no human presence in hegemony space. Even to save hegemony lives? Even if it means saving the entire planet, Korkstan confirmed coldly. Orders are orders. The communication ended abruptly, leaving the bridge in tense silence. Ambassador Kethavar watched Admiral Chen carefully, wondering how she would handle this impossible situation. Admiral, Commander Jackson said quietly, the fleet is ready for combat operations. We can disable their ships without casualties if necessary, and prove to the entire galaxy that humans solve problems with violence. Admiral Chen shook her head. No, there has to be another way. Suddenly, Communications Officer Chen straightened at her station. Admiral, I'm receiving a transmission from the planet's surface. It's not from our teams. Put it through. The voice that filled the bridge was young, barely past adolescence, speaking in the musical tones of the hegemony's dominant species. Human ships, this is Zethara from New Prosperity City. I'm speaking for the Civilian Council. Admiral Chen leaned forward. This is Admiral Chen, how can we help you, Zethara? Admiral, we know what Fleet Commander Korkstan is threatening. We also know that if you leave, our world dies. The Civilian Council has voted unanimously to request continued human assistance. I appreciate that, Admiral Chen replied carefully, but your fleet commander has ordered us to withdraw. Admiral, the young voice continued with surprising steel, Korkstan doesn't speak for us. He's a military commander following orders from a capital that's 3 days away. We're the ones living here, the ones who will die if you leave. Before Admiral Chen could respond, another voice joined the transmission, older, more authoritative. Admiral Chen, this is Chief Medical Officer Velkan of New Prosperity General Hospital. Our medical facilities are completely overwhelmed. Your Dr. Torres and her team have saved hundreds of lives in the past 12 hours. We formally request continued medical assistance. More voices began joining the transmission. Engineers reporting on the cooperation between human and hegemony technical teams. Teachers speaking about human personnel helping to evacuate schools. Ordinary citizens expressing gratitude for the relief supplies and temporary shelters. Within minutes, what had started as a single young voice had become a chorus of thousands. Citizens across the planet were broadcasting their support for the human presence, their gratitude for the assistance, and their desperate plea for the humans not to abandon them. Fleet Commander Korkstan's image reappeared on screen, his face twisted with fury. Ignore those transmissions. They are civilians and have no authority to make diplomatic decisions. Commander, Admiral Chen replied with icy calm. Those civilians are the people we're here to save. Their voices matter. Not to me they don't. You have 30 minutes to begin withdrawal or I will open fire. The transmission ended, but immediately another appeared. This time it was Governor Maltek, and he looked haggard but determined. Admiral Chen, I've been in communication with the Hegemony Council. The fleet commander's orders were issued before the full extent of the crisis was understood. I have emergency authority to supersede military commands when civilian lives are at stake. Meaning I'm officially requesting continued human assistance and ordering Fleet Commander Korkstan to stand down. Governor, Admiral Chen said carefully, Will he obey those orders? Malthek's expression was grim. Corkston has always been inflexible when it comes to human contact. He may choose to interpret his original orders as taking precedence. As if to confirm the governor's fears, the tactical display showed the hegemony ships moving into attack formation. Fleet Commander Corkston's voice echoed across all frequencies. All ships prepare to engage the human fleet. They have been warned and refused to comply. Ambassador Kethvar felt his heart sink. Despite everything, despite the lives at stake and the civilian support and even the governor's orders, the military commander was choosing to start a war rather than allow humans to complete their rescue mission. But then something unprecedented happened. Fleet Commander, came a voice from one of the hegemony ships. This is Captain Theldar of the Righteous Fury. I cannot comply with that order. More voices followed from other ships in the fleet. This is the Stellar Pride. We refuse to fire on ships conducting humanitarian operations. Infinite glory here. Our crew will not participate in attacking medical personnel. Within moments, 10 of the 12 ships in Corkston's fleet had declared their refusal to engage the humans. Only the fleet commander's flagship and one loyal escort remained in attack position. Mutiny, Corkston screamed across the comm channels. This is mutiny. No, sir, Captain Theldar replied firmly. This is honor. We will not fire on those who came to save our people. Admiral Chen watched this unprecedented display with amazement. An entire military fleet was choosing to disobey orders rather than attack humanitarian workers. She had seen the courage of her own people many times. But witnessing similar courage in former enemies was something else entirely. Admiral, Dr. Torres's voice came from the planet's surface. We're seeing something incredible down here. Hegemony military personnel stationed on the planet are openly working with our teams. They're sharing classified geological data, providing security for our medical stations, even volunteering to help with the evacuation procedures. Commander Jackson smiled grimly. Looks like not everyone in the hegemony military is as rigid as their fleet commander. Admiral Chen, Governor Malthek's voice cut through the chatter. I'm ordering Fleet Commander Corkston to return to base immediately. Captain Theldar will assume command of the remaining ships and will provide support for your humanitarian mission. Acknowledged, Governor, Admiral Chen replied. We'll have your planet stabilized within 8 hours. Fleet Commander Corkston's flagship began moving toward the system's edge, but not before one final transmission. This isn't over, Admiral. The hegemony will not forget this humiliation. Commander, Admiral Chen replied quietly, there's no humiliation in being wrong about good people doing good things. We'll be here if you change your mind. As the hostile ships departed, Ambassador Kethvar realized he had witnessed something remarkable, not just human determination to save lives regardless of political consequences, but the response of ordinary people throughout the galaxy to that determination. The humans hadn't just saved a planet. They had proven that when forced to choose between orders and conscience, between politics and humanity, good people would choose correctly. The test of trust was over. Humanity had passed, but more importantly, so had everyone else. 6 months after the crisis at New Prosperity, the former hegemony capital world of Prime Ascendancy buzzed with unprecedented activity. The massive orbital station that had once served as a military command center was now being converted into something the galaxy had never seen before. The Galactic Cooperative Council at Ambassador Kethvar stood in the observation deck of the orbital facility, watching human construction vessels work alongside ships from dozens of different species. The sight would have been unimaginable just a year ago, when the various factions had been locked in an ever-escalating arms race. Impressive, isn't it? Admiral Chen's voice came from behind him. She joined him at the massive viewport, wearing not her military uniform but the simple gray attire of a civilian administrator. Admiral, Kethvar began, then caught himself. I apologize, Director Chen. I'm still adjusting to your new role. Sarah Chen smiled. I'm still adjusting to it myself. Commanding a fleet is one thing. Helping to build an interstellar government is something else entirely. Through the viewport, they watched a remarkable scene unfold. A human engineering team was working with hegemony technicians to install what had once been classified military shield technology onto civilian transports. Nearby, Republic medical personnel trained, coalition doctors in advanced trauma procedures that had been developed for treating humans injured in Earth's hostile environment. The medical exchange program has exceeded all expectations, Dr. Torres reported as she approached them. Like Admiral Chen, she now wore civilian clothes, though she still carried herself with the confidence of someone accustomed to working in crisis situations. Apparently, medical techniques developed for treating humans are incredibly effective for other species as well. Our emergency surgery procedures have reduced mortality rates by 40% across participating worlds. And the defensive shield technology? Kethavar asked. 300 worlds have been equipped with planetary defense networks, Admiral Chen replied. Not a single successful pirate attack in the past 4 months. Turns out when everyone can defend themselves effectively, raiders look for easier targets outside our territory. Director Chen gestured toward a section of the station where delegates from various species were engaged in animated discussion. The trade agreements are proving even more successful than the military cooperation. When you're not spending 80% of your budget on weapons, you have a lot more resources available for education, infrastructure, and research. Ambassador Kethvar noticed a familiar figure among the delegates and smiled. Captain Theldar, the hegemony officer who had refused to fire on the human humanitarian mission, now wore the insignia of the Cooperative Defense Force. His transformation from rigid military officer to collaborative leader had been remarkable to witness. The most interesting development, Dr. Torres continued, is the scientific cooperation. When you combine human adaptability with Altarian mathematics, coalition energy manipulation, and Republic biological expertise, you get research breakthroughs that none of us could achieve alone. Speaking of which, Director Chen said, I have something to show you. She led them through corridors that bustled with activity to a secure section of the station. The laboratory they entered was unlike anything Kethavar had ever seen, filled with technology that seemed to blend the best innovations from every member species. Dr. Yilnax, Director Chen called to a Republic scientist working at a massive holographic display. Could you show Ambassador Kethvar the latest results? The scientist's feathers ruffled with excitement. Ambassador, we've achieved something unprecedented. By combining human gravitational manipulation with coalition quantum field theory and our own biological adaptation techniques, we've developed terraforming technology that can make Deathworlds habitable. Kethvar stared at the display showing a barren, radiation-scorched planet slowly transforming into a green, living world. You're saying you can take worlds like Earth and make them safe for other species? Or take dead worlds and make them suitable for any species, Dr. Yilnax confirmed. The implications are staggering. Instead of fighting over habitable planets, we can create new ones. Instead of resource scarcity driving conflict, we can expand into previously uninhabitable systems. There's more, Director Chen added with evident pride. Show him the Deep Space Project. The holographic display shifted to show the edge of the galaxy, where massive construction projects were underway. Ships from every member species worked together to build something that defied easy description. Generation ships, Dr. Torres explained. Not for evacuation or colonization, but for exploration. We're preparing expeditions to other galaxies, combining the best of all our technologies and cultures. Kethvar felt a sense of awe wash over him. You're planning to explore beyond our galaxy? Why not? Director Chen asked with a smile. We've proven that cooperation works better than conflict. We've shown that diversity makes us stronger, not weaker. The next logical step is to see what's out there in the greater universe. As they talked, Kethvar became aware of something that had been building throughout the station. It started as a low hum of conversation, but gradually grew louder and more excited. Looking through the laboratory's viewports, he could see crowds gathering on observation decks throughout the facility. What's happening? He asked. Director Chen checked her communication device and smiled broadly. They're back. Who's back? The first contact team. Remember how we sent out exploration vessels to investigate other star systems that were classified as uninhabitable? They're returning from the Vega system. They made their way quickly to the main docking bay, where hundreds of delegates and citizens had gathered. As they watched, a human exploration vessel approach the station, but it wasn't alone. Escorting it were ships of a design none of them had ever seen before. The crowd fell silent as the airlock engaged and the first contact team emerged. Behind them came beings that were immediately recognizable as intelligent, but unlike any species in the known galaxy. They moved on 6 legs, had skin that seemed to shift color with their emotions, and possessed large, multifaceted eyes that sparkled with obvious intelligence. Captain Rodriguez, the human exploration team leader, approached Director Chen with barely contained excitement. "Director, I'd like you to meet Ambassador Clixtel of the Vegan Collective. They've been monitoring our communications and would like to join the cooperative." Ambassador Clixtel stepped forward, their skin shifting to patterns that the universal translator interpreted as formal greeting. "Director Chen, we have observed your species and your allies with great interest. Your response to the hegemony crisis was broadcast across our networks. We wish to learn from civilizations that choose cooperation over conquest." Director Chen extended her hand in the human gesture of greeting, which Clixtel carefully mimicked with one of their appendages. "Welcome to the Galactic Cooperative, Ambassador. We're honored to meet you." As the crowd erupted in celebration, Kethvar reflected on the incredible journey that had brought them to this moment. It had all started with a simple distress call, an SOS from a diplomatic vessel under attack. The humans had responded not because they had anything to gain, but because it was the right thing to do. That single act of compassion had triggered a cascade of events that transformed the entire galaxy. Former enemies had become allies. Ancient rivalries had given way to unprecedented cooperation. Fear had been replaced by hope, and isolation by unity. Dr. Torres appeared beside him as the celebration continued around them. "Remarkable, isn't it? A year ago, most of the galaxy had never heard of humanity. Now we're planning joint expeditions to other galaxies. What changed everything?" Kethavar asked, though he suspected he already knew the answer. "Simple," Dr. Torres replied with that warm smile that no longer seemed threatening. "We proved that the strongest force in the universe isn't weapons or technology or military might. It's the willingness to help strangers in need, even when it costs you something to do it." Director Chen rejoined them, her face glowing with the satisfaction of seeing former enemies working together as friends. "Ambassador Kethvar, I have a question for you." "Of course, Director. The Republic Council has asked us to send a joint expedition to the Andromeda Galaxy. Scientific exploration, cultural exchange, maybe even finding new species to invite into the cooperative. Would you be interested in serving as the mission's chief diplomatic officer?" Kethvar looked around at the celebration, at the impossible sight of dozens of species working together in harmony, at the promise of an even brighter future stretching out among the stars. "Director Chen," he said with growing excitement, "I can't think of anything I'd rather do." As the party continued around them, Ambassador Kethavar realized that the galaxy had learned something profound from the Deathworlders, who had answered their distress call. True strength didn't come from survival of the fittest or conquest of the weak. It came from the simple recognition that in a vast and often hostile universe, no one had to face the darkness alone. The age of cooperation had begun, and it was more beautiful than anyone had dared to imagine.